Hi, welcome everyone to PopCultX episode 101. We made it into the hundreds. Pop culture from the Gen X perspective with your co-host Gabriel, and with me is Danny. As always, we sort of talk about pop culture, whether that be television, music, comic books, etc. So let's go ahead and get into it this week. Danny, how's it going? What have you been up to?
Not too much. Going good, I guess. Been watching a lot of Apple TV Plus. I feel like that's been like the my streaming channel of choice of late. Ted Lasso, Hello Tomorrow. There's another one I want to watch with Chris O'Dowd called The Big Door Prize. I haven't gotten to that yet. And they recently released a movie on there that I thought was really fun, and it's called Tetris. Yes, they made a movie about the making of Tetris. Well, not so much the making, but more about the licensing of Tetris. And it's a really fun suspense thriller. They made it into that because it takes place in, right towards the end of communist Russia. So it's right when the USSR collapses and the Soviet state begins, with Gorbachev's end of his reign there, I guess. And it's really good, interesting if you're a fan of video games, and especially if you're a fan of Tetris, which is probably one of the top selling games ever.
Yeah,
I mean, if you can remember when Tetris came out on Game Boy and how addictive that was for a lot of people. So it was. It stars what was his name? Taron Egerton. I think that's how you say it. Egerton, yes, from the Kingsman
biopic.
And yes, and who I think people were like calling to be like the next Wolverine in the MCU, and I could see him playing that.
So. I could see that. Yeah, he's a little guy.
Hey, nothing wrong with us little guys. Come on.
But yeah, I could totally see that. That would be some good casting there.
Yeah, and he did a great job in the movie. I thought it was really well done. Like most of Apple TV stuff, they do a really good job with all of their productions. And I think we've talked about this before, where they choose to go quality over quantity. So that's about it for me. I mean, I got to get into Schmigadoon season 2, Schmicago, which is interesting. I haven't watched it yet. I haven't finished up season 1. But I guess season 2 takes place in like the 60s, 70s era of musicals. So think like Jesus Christ Superstar, in that really like hippie, flowy type of stuff, really a little more edgy type. So I'm curious to see what they do with that.
Nice. Well, to jump on your bandwagon of Apple Plus television, I have been really getting into this show called My Kind of Country. It's executive produced by Casey Musgraves and Witherspoon. And what it is basically it's like The Voice or American Idol, but for country music. But what the interesting twist for me is that they're specifically looking to diversify the sound of country. So they're looking for people who aren't your typical, cis, straight, white country stars, because that's who we really see, right? Think of your country pop stars. They typically tend to be straight white guys or straight white girls, men and women. And so this is a really interesting take on that. You have contestants from like India, South Africa, Mexico, the United States, people from various ethnic backgrounds, racial dimensions. So that's what kind of pulled me into it. I'm not a huge fan of country music. I think I'm a fan of like older country music like Johnny Cash, but not so much of like the pop stuff. But it really pulled me in. The stories of the people are really interesting, how they got involved into country music. The judges are pretty cool too. Orville Peck, who is an LGBT country music singer from Canada via South Africa. Mickey Guyton and Jimmy Allen, who are both African-American country music stars. And so they kind of come from that diverse background. And so they're wanting to make it a little bit more inclusive within the pop country landscape. And so I was like, that's an awesome idea. Let me go by watching it. A spoiler alert, I'm going to let you know who won if people haven't seen it. The winner has already been announced, and I did see the finale. Michaela Klainsmith, who is the winner, she is from South Africa as well. She has this really amazing voice. She's a really soft spoken, really sensitive soul. She was like bullied her whole life. She's a larger person, so her size had been kind of a point of contention for her growing up. She's Black South African, so that probably also played into it as well. And so you really see her growing from someone who's not the most confident into like a really confident country music singer. Does a really amazing cover of the band Perry, and then does an original song, and she kills it. And she wins, and that's actually what I've been listening to on iTunes to kind of transition over into what is new or what I am listening to. I'm looking it up now, but it's Michaela Klainsmith, Kleinsmith, and her EP is called Butterfly, and one of the songs is called Raise This Cup. Really cool song, kind of a really like folky country music sound. So not necessarily what you would think of when you think of country music, but definitely really interesting. And she has an amazing voice. So I'm really happy that we got like a new voice in country, especially someone that represents a bit of diversity within that genre of music. And so really cool. I'm really glad to have seen this produced. Good job to Casey Musgraves and Reese Witherspoon for bringing out this idea. I think it's really great. It actually would be kind of cool to see that in other genres of music that we really don't get to see, but I don't know if we'll ever get to see it, but I think it's a great idea. If you're a fan of country music, or if you're just a fan of reality music competitions like American Idol or The Voice, I definitely would check it out. It's really fun. It's really interesting. It's kind of short. There's not too many episodes. You can watch it probably in one night if you fast forward through some of the more less interesting areas and listen to the performances. But I would definitely recommend it and check it out. But definitely check out Michaela's new EP. It's definitely worth a listen to.
That's cool. I found it interesting that you said that there was 2 African-American judges on the panel. Because when I think of country music, the only African-American artist I think of is like Darius Rucker, right? Formerly of Hootie and the Blowfish. Right. And so I thought that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that it speaks to a really big movement within country music to acknowledge the fact that their fan base is really diverse. You have people that are Latino American, people that are African American, Black, or people just in general from different countries that aren't necessarily reflected in the stars. And so one of the points that one of the judges makes is that they should have a Mexican star because cowboy culture evolved from vaquero culture. The style, the singing, things of that nature. And so it really makes sense for them to have a Mexican country western star. So it's a really interesting show. It sounds like it might be like forcing diversity, but it's not. It's very natural. All of the people who participate in the show are very much fans of country music, and they are all graded on like authenticity of their voice, making sure that they're not just trying to get their foot in the door somehow, but they actually do like the art of country music. So really cool show. Definitely recommend it. I liked it, and it was worth a watch. So definitely check it out.
We'll have to check that out then. Yeah, when I think like Mexican country music, like you said, isn't that like banda or ranchero music already? Isn't that country enough?
Yeah, but there's like Mexican American singers like Jody Messina, Freddie Fender, who sing in English and are country.
Western okay. I got you. Okay.
Linda Ronstadt did a lot of country music as well. She's Mexican American. So I think that those are where they want to branch out into. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. The other big thing that I'm kind of excited about is that we have a really cool interview coming up here within the next few minutes with Josh Trujillo, who is writer above excellence, that has worked on a ton of different projects, but specifically a lot of hype over his recent work on Blue Beetle Graduation Day. Issues 1 through 5 have been out, waiting for number 6, unlike that little cliffhanger that we'll get into. But definitely excited about our conversation with him and delve into what's going on with him. Hi, welcome so much to PopCultX, Josh. Please allow me a moment to introduce you to our friends. Josh Trujillo is a writer, editor, and narrative designer based in Los Angeles. He has worked with clients including Marvel, HBO, Google, Netflix, and DC Comics, among others. Josh has written for various iconic characters, including Superman, Wonder Woman, and The Flash. We're currently reading Josh's work for DC, Blue Beetle, Graduation Day. Once again, welcome to our show, Josh.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, it's really great to be able to chat with you. And looking at your biography on your website, or I guess your bibliography, if you will, you've written a lot of stuff. You span this across so many different genres and so many different medium types. But I guess the question that I have at the beginning is, what made you want to be a writer? Was a storyteller always inside of you, and it somehow just found its way out?
Yeah. So, as long as can remember, I've always wanted to tell stories or retell stories. Or my grandparents used to have the newspaper every morning, and so they'd read me the comic strips, so like Garfield or Peanuts or Calvin and Hobbes or whoever. And so I would cut them up and I would rearrange the panels. And I think that's how I learned how comics were made, because I was like, oh, if you put them in a different order, they say different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd start to trace over Garfield cartoons and like make my own. And like, so, I mean, it's kind of always, I've wanted to do that. It just takes a heck of a long time to actually pull it off.
Yeah.
So speaking of your introduction to comics, you mentioned Garfield. Were there any other comics that really like pulled you into the genre? Were you like a fanboy at heart?
Yeah, when I was like super young, like, so I didn't get into superheroes until probably X-Men the animated series. So it's at 92. So but before then it was always about the comic strips. So like I said, Peanuts, Garfield, Blondie, Calvin and Hobbes. What are some of the other ones I loved back then? But like anything that was it printed in the newspaper, I would go through them, I'd cut them out, I'd make little stacks of them. Nice. And then after X-Men, it was like that awakening, right? Like you're like, oh, like this is the kind of story I want to tell. I want to tell a story about colorful characters that are like fighting the good fight, but they're also like fighting for stuff too, right? It's like not just like whoever punching a bad guy and stopping a bank robbery. There's like a weight to it that even as a kid you kind of pick up on. So that was kind of like that rode me through the 90s. I want to say we didn't have a lot of comic shops near us. They all went out of business in the early 90s, like everyone else is. And so, the only way we got exposure to these characters was through trading cards, video games, movies, and TV shows. And so that kind of influenced like me up until I got into junior high, where I had a little bit of my own money. I could start buying comics.
That's cool. So did you go the formal route to learn how to become a writer, or did you just sort of start doing it on your own?
Oh gosh, I kind of started doing it on my own in a sense. The short version is I worked at Disneyland outside of high school. I worked on the Winnie the Pooh ride. I pressed buttons all day. Oh, wow. And I had a friend who had an internship at a comic book company, and she was a film student. And she was like, I don't know why they have me here. This isn't helpful. Do you want to do this? And I was like, yes, obviously. Like, this is the thing I've always wanted to do. So you get in there and you're just like, making coffee, taking calls. You're not really making comics, but you like are close to it. And that was enough to like get me the bug. But it's an unpaid internship. So I waited tables, I worked in restaurants, I managed restaurants, I bartended, a lot of the service industry stuff. And I worked like, those kind of like common jobs for maybe like 10 years, 11 years. And the whole time I'm trying to make something in comics happen. Brian Michael Bendis has a quote that's something like, you don't get your first paycheck in comics until you've been working there for 10 years. And that almost lines up to the day from when I had my first internship to when I got my first real assignment in a comic book.
Oh, wow. What was that first assignment?
So Chris Northrup and Jeff Stokely had a book called The Reason for Dragons from Archaea. And I was really in the weeds with them, helping get this book get made, not necessarily like writing or anything, but like looking over pages, or just like I was there for the whole journey. And they're like, we want to do something nice for you. Like, we're going to give you a 2-page short. And for me, 2 pages was like the biggest deal in the world, right?
No.
And so like I'm incredibly proud of it, but it's looking at it now, it's like, oh man, like you had a lot to learn, didn't you?
But hey, 2 pages is still a short, right? You still got something created. Did you pull from I guess, any of your background when you wrote that short, or was it just within that world that they created?
Yeah, that one's a funny one. So the reason for dragons is about kind of a nerdy Dungeons and Dragons obsessed kid where fantasy starts to bleed into the real world. And this was all before Stranger Things or anything like that.
Right.
So it was about that. And so I kind of told a story about this kid that was kind of like, he had all these fantasy books, and all the fantasy gaming books I had growing up had kind of these like curvy, beautiful, voluptuous women on them. Like that was just the style of fantasy art at the time, all this Frank Franzetta stuff. And so the story is kind of about this, like him getting in trouble with his dad because it's like, what are these books you've got lying around here all the time? And so that's kind of what the story is about. But a little bit based on my experience. But if you know about my body of work, I'm not necessarily lusting after Valkyries.
It's funny you mentioned that. I just went to WonderCon, I guess a few weeks ago, and some of the anime products, the stickers and mouse products, all just different types of products. I was blushing as like a 40-something-year-old man. I was like, oh my God, some of this stuff is really, really sexual. And then on the flip side of that, though, I was like, where's the male equivalent? These are all just like females being like overly sexualized and objectified, but there's like no male equivalent. It's really interesting to kind of change your perspective and think like, what would happen if someone set up booth at a con and was selling like these really, I mean, there are some, but not to the extent that you see it within, straight guy culture.
Sure. No, it's funny. I remember Wizard Magazine, which was like the way you find out what the new books were, had these covers of like, I think it was Greg Horn doing Elektra, and just like this very like beautiful airbrush, like could have been in Playboy kind of image of her. And my mom saw it and she's like, you have to rip off that cover or you have to throw it away. And I was like, you could have the cover. I just want to know. I want to know what the X-Men are up to next month. Like, I don't care.
I was sort of in the same situation as you, I think.
You mentioned gaming and Dungeons and Dragons, and I guess some of your work has to do with a kitchen table game. I think it's called Death Saves. And tell me a little bit more about that, because when I was reading that on your biography, I thought that was really cool. So I'd like to hear a little bit story about how that came to be, because I used to play Dungeons and Dragons back in the day. It was kind of fun. So this is quite interesting to me.
Yeah, so I'm like a big gamer at heart, but I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons or games like Dungeons and Dragons, Star Wars RPG. I've been playing since I was like 12, and I've been playing like nonstop. So
cool.
Basically, when I run the game, I really like a lot of tension at the table, kind of, and I kind of like when players get killed off in the game. I like when characters get beheaded or poisoned or cursed or whatever. I think that's fun for me. It makes the game unexpected. And so I wanted to do a collection of stories that could spotlight some of my friends and their work and also give myself some new stories to create. So the gimmick is Death Saves are all about fantasy role-playing games, like Dungeons and Dragons, but not officially Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
So, but in the story, a character has to die. And that's it. That's the only rule. So, like bad rolls, bad players, bad dungeon masters, everything in between. And so we did the first volume, and it was like my first time going on Kickstarter. And it was like, it blew up. Like we had no idea what to expect, which was amazing. We went from being like, was supposed to be like a 100-page paperback to being like a 200-page hardcover book.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And we did a follow-up for that a few years later. We're kind of getting the band back together to do a third one, but it's probably too early to talk about that. But I love that community aspect of these games. I love that shared experience, like this kind of like this continuity we create that only lives at the table, right?
Yeah.
And like the special world that like is ours. And like, even though I am creative all day long for my job, it's a little mercenary, right? Because I'm like creative for cash. I'm creative for money. Whereas like if I'm going to play my game with my friends, there's no there's none of that. It's just the purest form of art and creativity. And I think these games are so cool. And like, I'm glad they're mainstream because like, as someone who was not very social at all, it kind of had to break me out of my shell. And I had to learn how to deal with different personalities, deal with, different personalities, different play styles, learning how to ask people direct questions in a way like that I hadn't before. It's really a great way to build confidence.
Yeah, and they stick with you. I mean, I haven't played probably in 30 years since I was about 12, 13 years old, but I still remember those games at the table and just I guess maybe it was just the DM and he the way he structured it. I remember playing with like the samurai packages and stuff, and it was just so much fun. It was just so much fun, and maybe it's just something that I'm trying to rekindle and grab onto. But yeah, it was just so much fun.
No, it's never. I mean, obviously, it's never too late, and like, there's so many different ways to connect with your friends online now. Whether it's like
it's true,
one of those like D&D online games, like Roll20, or like my friends and I were just playing Carcassonne online the other day, and that was like a blast because it keeps track of the points for you, which is always the hardest part of that game for me.
One of the things for me that I think is really exciting is seeing more diversity within like science fiction or fantasy realm. One of the things that kind of discouraged me from getting really involved in like Dungeons and Dragons or fantasy was that I never really saw anyone that like reflected myself within that genre. But now we see that like it's, expanding so much to welcome so many different people and recognize that the fan base is made up of so many different types of people and they're becoming creators and the characters are sort of reflecting the community as well. I just recently saw Dungeons and Dragons, the movie, and was excited to see Michelle Rodriguez in it, a Latina. And I thought, oh, finally I can see like someone that is very similar to me within that fantasy realm. It may seem, for some people it may seem not that important, but God, it really makes you feel like you could participate in that. And I'm curious if you felt the same way as being, a creator on the other spectrum, how important for representation is for you.
Yeah, like it's really important for me. Like I always say that like a big goal of my work is to help people see themselves in these like fictional worlds. Because like, again, like I'm a gay guy. There was no representation in fiction or anything I interacted with until I was much, much older. Like I think it was until like Hulkling and Wiccan debuted probably in the early 2000s, right? So like that was like 20 something years. So like it's really cool, I think, for like little Latinas out there. They're going to see that they could be a big, strong barbarian too. And just like Michelle Rodriguez is just perfect casting for a barbarian. She basically plays one in the Fast and the Furious movies already.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of hers. You mentioned gay, and I am also a gay comic book fan. So I have to kind of sidetrack here. You created Aaron Fisher, the first LGBTQ Captain America, and to me is a really compelling character. I mean, not just a superhero that's godlike, but someone that is is just a very how can I say this? Has a lot of dimension and to the character. What was your inspiration for wanting to create a character such as him?
Yeah, so Aaron Fisher came about because Christopher Cantwell did a miniseries called The United States of Captain America, and each issue spotlighted a different character who was inspired by Captain America, who took on the mantle themselves. So mine was Aaron Fisher. He's a gay runaway from Missouri. He just this punk. He's a tough Jewish kid who likes to travel the country. They call him the Captain America of the railways. But I wanted how do I say this? We're very lucky to have as many queer and gay specifically characters as we do right now in comics. There's always room for more, of course. But a lot of them that kind of came into being in the 2000s were kind of a product of their time. They're kind of shiny and happy and very well adjusted, and they don't have a lot of grit to them, right? And so like it wasn't until like Dakin, I want to say, or like Wolverine's son, that we kind of got some of that energy. And I was like, I want someone with a little more grit. It would be one thing to just have like a little Bucky, right? Like, go get him, Cap. Like, I'm on your side. And like, I was like, I don't want to do that guy. But I wanted to kind of reflect some of the real world struggles that people were going through, just like Captain America did originally. So like, I live in LA, and any major city you might live in, there's a big housing situation. There are a lot of people on the streets, and people who are LGBTQ are disproportionately affected by that. And so I wanted to have a character who maybe people could look towards and kind of make them think about that issue. And so Aaron is kind of like a protector to these runaways, to these unhoused people, and he really interacts with them in a more meaningful way than a lot of these heroes do. You don't see Tony Stark necessarily dealing with any of these situations. He's busy protecting skyscrapers or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's so important, like you said, that we have realistic representations of our community, that it's not just, we did need at one point, the shiny, happy, superhero, godlike type characters, but that we also have people that are facing the realities that we face in their own community. And so I applaud you for that, because I think that it was a very brave move, because I think it could be somewhat controversial in a sense, is that, maybe people are looking for a perfect representation of someone within the gay community or the gay spectrum. But to show that, maybe they're not experiencing a perfect life could be kind of controversial for some that, are just looking for us to have like a perfect, token. But for you to actually bring someone to life that is very real life, I think was really courageous of you and really cool. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. And, it wouldn't be possible without Jan Bazaldua and I came together, the artists, and we came up with the whole overalls, the homemade DIY Captain America look for him. Yeah. And it really took off. When the character debuted, it was like, must have been a slow news day, but it was like in Entertainment Weekly, and it was on like Fox News, and it was on like literally that for like 24 hours, it was on TMZ. My mom called me and she's like, "You're on TMZ." And I was like, "What?" And so like, I'll never make anything like that again. But like, it really resonates with people, and Marvel knows what they have. And there's some big things coming for him, but that's not my announcement to make, unfortunately.
I hadn't heard of this character, Gabe. Thanks for not telling me about him. But that sounds really interesting and really compelling. I'm going to have to go look him up, because I'm really interested in reading about this character.
Yeah, it's a personal favorite for me, obviously, but people really seem to resonate with him, and I've seen people tag me in cosplay photos all around the country, and it's crazy because he's only been in a handful of issues right now. But like, that's just the power these characters have with people.
Yeah, it just speaks to how important it is for, and how hungry we are for representation. I remember as a kid, flipping through comics and either, seeing a Spanish surname or seeing someone with dark hair and thinking, oh, can I find some clue to show that, maybe they're Latino, or is there like a gaze that one male character gave another? Are they possibly gay? And I remember how, I searched for that. I was just looking for that sort of validation in the characters and thinking, we can be superheroes too. Like, we can take that mantle as well. And so, speaking of which, one of my favorite characters in comics is Blue Beetle. So this is a perfect transition. Jaime Reyes, you were currently have worked on Blue Beetle Graduation Day. Issues 1 through 5 is currently out. Sort of a cliffhanger to the last issue in the series, but I've all caught up 1 through 5. Great job. It is a great series. But I would love to be able to start talking to you about that. How did you come to work on such a great book?
Oh gosh, this is a long story too, because nothing happens quick, and that's not true. Things either happen immediately in comics, or they take your entire life. So I did a book for Boom Studios called Dodge City. And it was just a teen dodgeball book. I'm very proud of it. I worked with Cara McGee as the artist. And basically, it features a young Latino lead. There's a fair amount of Spanish untranslated. And so I think the editor at DC, who I had a relationship, who I knew, she saw that and was like, "You'd be a perfect fit for Blue Beetle. Like, we want that youthful energy. We want that voice, and we want that authenticity." And I was like, perfect. She's like, "We're going to set you up with a one shot or a mini series. We're still figuring it out." I'm like, cool. Then she leaves the company like 5 minutes later.
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh my, like, no, I thought that was going to be the thing. So her assistant editor, Andrew Marino, very nice guy, he never forgot. And it's been years. And every time there's like a little, like there's a little wedge or a little crack, he's like, I'm going to find a way. Don't give up. We're doing Blue Beetle. And so 3-4 years later, DC did this competition called Round Robin, where it was a bracket style elimination tournament for creative teams. So different creative teams would pitch a character or a team, and the winner of the competition, the fans would vote. The winner got to do a 6-issue miniseries with that premise. So me, Adrian Gutierrez, Will Quintana, and Andrew Marino, we were doing Blue Beetle. And to our surprise, honestly, because Jaime hadn't been around for a few years, people were hungry for him. And every time we went up against some great teams and some great creators, and we somehow rocketed to the semifinals. And we lost to Suicide Squad, which is fair. They had a movie coming out. You can't compete with Harley Quinn. I've learned that the hard way. But people didn't give up. Every time they would announce new books, people would always tag DC and be like, when's Blue Beetle? What's going on with Jaime? When are we going to get a Blue Beetle book? And so with the movie coming out, and DC was going to republish a lot of their older material, the John Rogers, Coley Hamner, Keith Giffen run, they wanted some new stuff. And they're like, well, we have a perfectly good Blue Beetle story right here. Like, let's make it happen. So it's not exactly what I pitched for the Round Robin. We've made some tweaks, obviously, but it's honestly a dream come true. I've been loving this character since I'm 17, 18. I talked to John Rogers, who was one of the co-creators of Blue Beetle. I think he works on the movie too. But and I was like, I love this book because Jaime was my age. I look like Jaime. I am Jaime. You know what I mean?
What I thought was
we have a scoop that you are actually Blue Beetle, and
there you go.
Actually, I should have pulled it out, but I have an unused cover design by Rafael Albuquerque of Blue Beetle issue number 7, the original run, and I bought it from must have been eBay for like $30, like in 2005 maybe, and I've had it in my mom's room in my room at my mom's house for 20 years. Wow. And I found it just recently and I was like, oh my God, this is like cosmic, right? Like it's one of those moments where it just like connects.
One of my favorite parts about your book, Blue Beetle, I'm missing just issue 3 because I can't find it anywhere, but is that you don't, like you said, you don't translate the Spanish, you leave it as Spanish. And I thought that was really ingenious in my mind because, I'm not fluent, but I know enough to get by. And if readers don't know it, they have to go look it up. So I thought that was really cool. But the kicker for me, what really hooked me into the whole series in Blue Beetle as a character, is that you had Superman speaking Spanish. Now, I don't know if there's precedence for that or not, but I thought that was so cool. And it really made me want to learn more about Jaime Reyes. So I'm just now looking up as much as I can about him.
Yeah, the Superman speaking Spanish was like one of my notes from the first day I started working on it, because it's insane to me that he wouldn't, right? Like he's Superman. He speaks probably every language. He's like he knows everything about architecture and science, and he's got all these crystals to teach him. Of course, he knows Spanish, and like more than that, he's just like a nice, chill guy. Like it just seemed such a perfect fit for Clark. So we do have not a lot, but we have a fair amount of Spanish in the book. And there are no plot secrets we're hiding in the language. Yeah. If you don't speak Spanish, I always recommend the Google Translate app. You just scan your phone over it and it translates pretty well. Or you can just get by not reading the Spanish portions. The art, I think, is so expressive. And we always, if something's important, we say it in English, but it is to make it feel more authentic to Jaime's experience. Yeah. He lives in a bilingual household. He lives in a bilingual community. It's the kind of community that I originally grew up in Orange County. But I just wanted to do something that felt a little true and not just him being like, I don't even know, doing some of those messier Spanglish moments that can pop up.
Right. And I appreciate that you didn't do that. I mean, it's authentic because I spoke to my wife about it and showed her, look, there's Spanish here in the comic book. And she was like, that's how it is for me at home, because she speaks Spanish with her family at home, but out in society or out in public, she speaks mainly English. So I thought that was really cool and true. I'm glad that you kept it like that.
Yeah, and something, I thought there was going to be more pushback from DC Comics about this, but my editor, Andrew, and everyone at the team was incredibly enthusiastic. Something special about Blue Beetle Graduation Day is that it's being published in the United States in English and in Spanish.
Yeah,
and they don't do that for any other book. So you can get a complete Spanish version or the English version, which contains some Spanish. But I was at WonderCon a few weeks ago as well, and people would come up to me and they'd be like, "My brother, this is the first comic I bought for him because it's in Spanish." And it's hopefully a good entry point. This is a lot of people's first comic, I hope. And so I just want to show them how cool and diverse and exciting the DC universe can be.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's really great that you did is that the series starts off with Jaime graduating from high school, and it's a really pivotal time in, I think, most young men's life. What are you going to do with your life? Even for those of us that aren't superheroes, but are you going to go to college? Are you going to be working at a restaurant? Or what are you going to? Who are you going to be? And I think that that's so relatable for so many people. Have that anxiety of, that pressure from your family, the pressure from society, pressure from yourself. Did you draw from your own back story for that? Or
yeah, definitely. They always say write what you know, and so maybe it's don't write what you don't know. Because I went to college briefly, but I ended up dropping out because of money and this and that, and so I ended up just working. I worked through my 20s, and I'm still working today, but I'm doing different kind of work. But a lot of Jaime's struggles are things that I felt when I was that age. That indecisiveness. And Jaime's in a different position than I was because Jaime has all this power and opportunity available to him, right? Yeah. He's been on the Justice League, he's been in the Teen Titans, he saved the world more times than we can count. But is that what you want to do? Or is that just what you're supposed to do? And I think that's a really interesting question for him. In the original run, there's kind of this big joke that he wants to become a dentist. And I'm not saying he'll never become a dentist, but I think we have to take a few more detours along the way, right?
Yeah. I think that'd be a really interesting story of a dentist. At least my dentist, I think, would appreciate having a superhero whose alter ego is a dentist during the day or during the night or what have you.
I want to do Old Man Beetle, where he's grayed and old and a 75-year-old dentist. It's just.
That would be awesome.
That would be cool. Well, is there plans to make Blue Beetle your run an ongoing series? Do you know, or is it just going to be contained within this limited 6
Yeah, DC's been very supportive of the book. They love the character. It's all going to depend. I hate that cliche. It just depends on sales. It depends on people pre-ordering the book, and it depends on how that book does kind of leading up to the movie, because the movie's out in August, I believe. Right. But we have no shortage of stories we want to tell with him. I say this with every character. They're like that 2-page short I did for the it was, and it's Josh, you need to drink some water and sit down. But for Jaime, I really could. I would take him. I would take him to the moon and back. And the whole team feels the same way. So. Fans have been supportive. I hope the numbers are there, but we'll be there in a heartbeat. And I would just say keep reading.
Yeah, absolutely. You spoke of the movie coming out soon. How excited are you to see something in the big screen in real life that you've been working on and written to see it? I'm excited as a fan. I can't wait to watch the movie.
It's so wild because it feels it's nothing I wrote, but it's I wrote that too. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's something that was important to me, even from before I was a creator, now is going to be important for so many people. Mm-hmm. And I just saw the trailer. I saw the Mario movie yesterday, and the trailer in IMAX blew me away. I cannot wait to see it on that format screen. But people were cheering
nice.
For Blue Beetle. And this is a character that I think people of a certain age maybe don't or above don't know the character very well, But I think if you're kind of in your 40s or younger, you know him from like the Injustice video games, Batman Brave and the Bold, Young Justice, all these different areas. But this is going to be his first exposure for a lot of people. So it's really cool to be like one step removed from being a part of this.
Well, yeah, I could say you're a part of it. Yeah, I mean, you're in the Blue Beetle family. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm the biggest cheerleader for this movie, humanly possible. I think Jolo, the lead, is like from Cobra Kai. He's such good casting. Like I'm sure someone just saw him and was like, "Oh, we have to make a Blue Beetle movie while he's young," right?
Yeah, I agree with you. When I saw it, I got, it was nothing short of having chills. Like I just think that it's so important for us to finally have like a Hispanic Latino lead superhero of this magnitude on the screen. It looks like it's so well done. I can't wait. I mean, I'm at a loss for words because it just looks so great. And me being a fan of the character, I'm so excited to actually see it come to life.
Yeah, it looks so funny, and like the cast is great. George Lopez is always hilarious, and like I'm really curious what they're doing with it. I know tiny bits about what happens in the movie, but I don't really know very much. And so I'm very stoked to be like to just I don't know. I hope I get to go to the premiere. If not, I'll be one of those people waving signs outside of the premiere.
Yeah, we should really push for you to go to the premiere, and you'll be a fan like us, getting to experience the movie for the first time. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's honestly this whole year is a dream come true because I get to talk Blue Beetle the entire time.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were a fan of Blue Beetle at a young age. You've worked on some, we mentioned that you worked on Wonder Woman, The Flash, huge superheroes. Is there anyone that is maybe less known or someone that you've been kind of itching to write that would be like a dream project of yours?
There are a couple still writing, hanging around in the back of my mind, but the big one right now is Bunker. I don't know if you guys know Bunker. He's from Teen Titans. He's a Scott Lobdell creation. Basically, he's a gay Mexican who has what I call Fortnite powers. So he creates energy bricks and he can like turn them into constructs. So he can make like a giant fist, or he can make like a wall, or he can do this or do that. And he's just like this like lighthearted goof of a guy. And he didn't really get his time to shine when he was on the Titans. And I'm like, but there's such potential there. Like his power set's really visually interesting. He's like, there aren't a lot of like queer Latino characters in the DC universe or any universe for that matter. And so like, I'm like, Bunker, if I get a chance, it's you and me. Like we're going to make you a star.
Nice.
You mentioned
that
Fortnite.
Would be really exciting. Like I said. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Danny.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying that would be a really exciting project for me as a fan to get a hold of, especially being a gay Latino. Like I said, it just is so hungry for representation and for those type of characters that getting one more would just be amazing for me.
Yeah, he's so cool. I grew up, like I said, learning about these characters through trading cards and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't have the good trading cards. You buy a couple packs, you end up with like, you don't get a Wolverine, you get like a Songbird or like, you know what I mean? Like someone who's not an A-list character. Yeah. And so you learn to love those characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like, I have the DC Who's omnibuses on my living room table. And like, I just love that. Like, that's one of my favorite things about the DC universe, that there's so many weird, colorful characters that like, they have so much going for them. And it's just a matter of like finding the right story for them. Like Kite Man. Like you could have told me 5 years ago that Kite Man was going to be like one of the more popular Batman villains. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But now because of the Harley Quinn show, everyone loves Kite Man now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that there's so much opportunity for so many different characters. That's one of the things that as a fan, I get frustrated when I see sort of maybe the rehashing of some of the same characters or same storylines. I'm like, why can't you use someone else? There are so many stories that have been untold yet. There's so many characters that are out there that I would die to see on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
Not anything specific that I'm hating on, but there's so much that is out there that we could really see that is really cool and original.
No, it's true. And like I always say, and this is maybe a bad example because I bet I could write a good story with them, but I'm like, I don't know if I have the best Lex Luthor story ever told in my heart. You know what I mean? There have been so many great stories with these characters. Like, who's next down the line? Like Atomic Skull, Prankster, Toyman. Like, give me the weird ones. I'll do something really interesting with it.
So interesting that you mentioned Lex Luthor because in Graduation Day in Blue Beetle, you introduce Victoria Cord. And there's a lot of kind of talk about where her character will lead. Do you see her as sort of a Lex Luthor type?
Victoria Cord is someone we added to the story as the outline was kind of coming together because we wanted traditionally Ted Cord is like the guy in the chair for Blue Beetle, right? He's like there to help Jaime. He's got all the tech stuff. And like, there's not really a lot of tension there. They've done some stories where they've kind of been at odds with each other, but I think we needed another voice. And so there is a lot of talk about where Victoria Cord's going, but she's one of the most brilliant minds in the DC universe, of course. She's obsessed with alien technology in particular. She wants to take all the alien tech, repurpose it to help humanity. Pretty straightforward, but as we learn in the series, she's got more going on than we think. She's got a couple secrets in her closet, like literally. And so kind of figuring out where she's going to go has been one of my favorite things. She's just been a delight to write and like kind of navigate what her journey is going to be. And it's cool to like create these characters that, like will get some play later down the line, right? You're like, it's that Chris Claremont X-Men thing. It's like, I'm going to write some plot threads and I may never necessarily get to all of them, but I know someday someone's going to like pick up that. But I would write Victoria for 100 issues. She cracks me up.
Yeah. I feel like she's already going to be like a gay icon character.
That's true. She's got the sunglasses and the pantsuit. And it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
With James Gunn now at the head of DC Studios, a lot of the turmoil I think is finally settling down. So maybe there is room for a lot of these minor, I wouldn't say minor character, but lesser known characters to have their day in the sun. So hopefully maybe you will get to write some more of those for on screen.
I will move heaven and earth to write more Blue Beetle and to write more the Cords in particular. I love Ted to death. I love the Justice League International from the 80s. I read those stories before I read the Jaime Blue Beetle stories. And so Ted's my Blue Beetle as well. But Graduation Day is, Ted's in the book, but it's Jaime's story for sure.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
I think though you did a great job of showing their relationship and how much he really looks out for Jaime and how he kind of, he's going against Batman at one point, right? So he really has his back. And I thought that was really cool that whole, story of family and almost really like chosen family at the same time, because you have, Superman looking out for him. You have all these other heroes, Starfire coming to kind of take care of Jaime, which is really kind of a touching aspect of the story.
Yeah, it's, family is at the center of what I think makes Blue Beetle work, even if his parents, Bianca and Berto, aren't around him right now because he's outside of the house. Someone told me like Jaime's superpower is that he has too many mentors. Like everyone wants to help Jaime, right? Like he's so likable. He's got so much potential. Everyone's like, you can do it. And so it's nice to have a cast that's like that truly has each other's backs in like this meaningful way. And getting to get Starfire in the book was huge for me. A lot of people, when I pitched it, were like, why Starfire? Because she's never had that connection with Jaime before. But I was like, he's got Batman to teach him how to be a grim and gritty superhero or detective. He's got Superman to kind of teach him how to be like this great protector. But Starfire is like a cosmic warrior queen. She's not street smart, but she's like space smart. When you're in outer space, she's super capable. She knows every threat. She knows every planet. But then she comes to Earth and she's just kind of like slumming it a little bit, right? So she has a lot still that she can learn from Jaime because she's, when she's on Earth, she's hanging around with Dick Grayson and eating Alfred's food. This is an opportunity for her to learn more about Earth culture too.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really happy to see her make a cameo in the book. I've always been a big fan of the Teen Titans, especially from the 80s. my age, that was the whole George Perez. I'm a big fan of his, and the stuff that he was doing on the Teen Titans is just amazing.
No, I love all those old Titans comics, and trying to dig through the continuity was interesting because the Titans have been in so many books together for decades and decades, and crossovers, and they crossed over with like X-Men, they crossed over with, I think, Star Trek. You just like everywhere you look. So trying to bottle that character Starfire down to like her essence was really tricky, but I think we did a good job with it. I hope we did a good job with it.
You got our approval here at PopCultX. I don't know how much that is worth, but
well, speaking of PopCultX, we are a pop culture show. So tell us briefly, what are you currently outside of comic books, I guess, watching, reading, listening to? Is anything that stands out to you?
Let's see. I saw the Mario movie yesterday. Highly recommend it. It's a family movie, so it is funny and quick and colorful and exciting. As a huge Nintendo guy growing up, and now still, it was perfect. So I love that. Beyond that, what am I watching? I watch a lot of YouTube videos. There's this channel called Defunct Land, and they do all these theme park video histories. So like each video is about a different theme park ride or land that got closed. And so it's about like the history of it, but mostly why it's closed. And the guy who does it, this guy, Kevin Perjurer, he's a really talented documentary guy. I don't know him personally, but you can tell as it goes on and on and on, he keeps upping his game every time. So what was once like maybe like a 20-minute video about like this roller coaster that broke down, now it's like a 90-minute movie documentary about the history of like Fast Pass, if you know Fast Pass from like the Disney parks. So it's just like wild stuff like that. I'm like, who wants to talk about Fast Pass for 90 minutes? But then he breaks it down and you're like, this is the most interesting thing I've ever seen.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. So that's really good. I'm listening to a lot of Godzilla music right now. I don't know what's going on in my brain, but I was like, I need to hear Mothra's song right now. And then it's devolved from there.
Devolved.
It's just getting worse, man. You ask me in a week, who knows what I'll be listening to.
Just spiraling down. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited for Fast X, I think we're calling it, the next Fast and the Furious movies. Ride or die. That's family. I'll be there till the end. But that's kind of the stuff that I'm into when I'm not writing, which is increasingly rare these days.
Nice. So are there any other current projects that you're working on that you can talk to us about right now?
Sure. I have a story in DC Pride featuring Apollo and Midnighter and a surprise guest, which I'm very excited to do. I've never had a chance to write those characters before. And it's interesting because they're like, if Hulkling and Wiccan are kind of the shiny, happy, perfect gay couple, Apollo and Midnighter are like rock and roll assholes. And it's so interesting to like, it's like, what? It's cool to write the other side of the coin with them. So that's really cool. I have another short for DC at the end of the year that hasn't been announced yet. And then a big thing for Marvel for Pride. It's not in the Pride special, but it'll be out really soon. Actually, I'm surprised they haven't announced it yet, but big thing for Marvel. And then keep reading Blue Beetle. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised.
Very cool.
Yeah. Do you happen to know when issue 6 will be out?
Yeah, I think it's 2 weeks from tomorrow when we're filming. So I think it's the 25th.
Okay, nice. Perfect.
So yeah, April 25th, issue 6, the Blue Beetle graduation day. It all comes to this. The new status quo is revealed. And we do a lot of fun and have a lot of fun and games with it. This whole series has been such a delight, and I haven't said enough about the team I've worked with on it. Adrian Gutierrez is my Blue Beetle brother. He's the artist. Everything he draws is so dynamic, has so much energy.
Exactly.
He's a perfect fit for that youthful exuberance, and he does these facial expressions that like make me crack up every time. And then Will Quintana's our colorist. He just paints the hell out of like these beetle armors, because we have new beetles. We have Natita, the green beetle, and we have Dynastus, the yellow beetle. They look like they just came out of the a car lot. They're like shining and like glowing practically. And then Lucas Gattoni is our letterer. He letters the book in English and in Spanish. He's the only letterer, as far as we know, in the entire world who's lettering in 2 languages.
Oh, wow.
That's
so
cool.
He deserves all the attention. Eisner voters, if you're listening, give him all the awards you can.
That's awesome.
Well, I have one final question for you, and it's something that I've been curious about when we talk to writers. How hard is it for you to keep a lid on all this upcoming stuff that, you really want to? For me, when I do something new, I want to share it with the world, right? So how hard is it and difficult is for you to have to quell that excitement for a while?
It's really hard. We didn't talk a lot about it in this interview, but like I work in video games as another part of my career.
I wanted
and those games, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. It's very serious. And if you spill something, it could ruin everything. But like in comics, it's a little, you have like, I can tell my boyfriend what I'm working on. And that's like, basically he has to deal with it every single day. I'm like, you won't believe what oh my God, this page is late, or my script needs to be rewritten, or blah, 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 blah. So I do have people I can vent to, but it is really, really hard keeping the secret, especially with stuff like the big Marvel thing coming out in just a few weeks. They haven't announced
Almost got
yet.
you there. No.
I know. Or a big DC thing that'll be announced in a few weeks too. So I'll be happy to chat about those when I'm allowed to.
Well, I guess then last question 1A. You mentioned video games, and I really wanted to maybe we'll bring you back on, because I really wanted to talk to you about video games. And so, that will be part 2 of the interview.
Perfect. So for our fans that like to interact with creators, are you active on Twitter, on Instagram?
I'm on Twitter till it burns down, and so your guess is as good as mine. But I'm on Twitter at Lost His Keys Man. I lost my keys, man. So there's another Josh Trujillo who's a very talented photographer. And we get confused a lot because he's at Josh Trujillo and I'm at Lost His Keys Man. So every time I get a book announced or people send him angry, like they're like, Hulkling wouldn't do that. And he's like, I'm not the guy. Like, I'm not the guy you should be talking to for this.
It's like, what are you talking about? That's awesome.
That's cool. So all the bad stuff goes to him, because all the positive vibes that people that know you, they know where to find you. So
I hope so, but I do feel bad for him. But sometimes I get emails are like, will you fly to Abu Dhabi to record this wedding? And I'm like, I will, but I don't think I'm the one you want.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much, Josh. We appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on to chat with us about Blue Beetle. And like you and the rest of the world, we're all going to be watching it when it comes out in August. So maybe we'll have you back on before then. We could chat again.
Yeah, I'd love that. Happy to chat about the movie or anything. And be sure to pick up Blue Beetle Graduation Day number 6, our big finale on April 25th.
There you go.
We will. Thank you so much. All right, so that was a great conversation with Josh Trujillo, a writer for Blue Beetle Graduation Day but issue number 6 out within the next few weeks. Keep an eye on that. Highly recommend the series if you haven't already picked it out. Issues 1 through 5 are already out, so visit your local comic book shop, pick those up. Can't really recommend them anymore.
Yeah, and pick up the one if you don't even have it. I have it in the all Spanish one that Josh was talking about. It's really cool. I mean, maybe it's a good way to learn Spanish. Why not? It's really cool. It's a great series. There you go. Todo en español.
Día de graduación.
Yes, it's really cool. So thanks again, Josh. We really appreciate your time. And I maybe we'll have you back on soon, because I really want to get into the video games that you've worked on. So I think that's about it for this episode 101. Thank you again, everyone out there, for sticking with us. If you haven't yet, or if you're new and this is your first time seeing us, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that way you're always notified when we release new episodes or specials or whatnot. Give it a like, and we'll see you all next time.
Stay safe, everyone. Thank you.